I'm Amos, host of Undaunted, a proud member of the Gonna Geek Network, just like the show you're listening to now. The opinions expressed are those of each individual host. Check out all the other podcasts at GonnaGeekNetwork.com and get ready, because geekiness begins in 3, 2, 1.
This is it. The part of your week where you get to put your headphones on, relax, and listen to a bunch of geeks geek out about geeky things. They're passionate.
As a Canadian, I will say that more than likely, I'm just going to get screwed another way. That's the way it always works.
They're knowledgeable.
Maybe that's where life began, on MU69. We don't know.
And sometimes they're a bit angry.
Skype, I'm breaking up with you. It's not me, it's totally you.
Gonna Geek Productions presents the official GonnaGeek.com show.
Hello and welcome to episode 100. Well, no, it's not 103. It's 213 of the official GonnaGeek.com show. I am Steven John Drew, and with me, of course, is Chris Farrell.
I'm from 2 years ago on episode 103.
Well, why not? There's probably at least 110 episodes that we shouldn't have made. We've also got Stargate Pioneer.
You just forgot 110 episodes that we have done together, our blood, sweat, and tears every Monday night at 8:45 p.m. Eastern at Geeks.live? I can't believe you.
We might not have all been here.
Yeah, I was going to say that your count currently sits at 133, Chris at 195, and me at 192. So there
I
you
find
go.
it hilarious that Chris has 3 more episodes than you.
Yeah. We've also, by the way, got Nate here. Nate, how's it going?
Good. This is my 14th appearance in this dimension.
Nate, you are a resident gamer of the GonnaGeek.com network, isn't that right?
I am, in fact, a resident gamer. I own all platforms. I play every game ever known. I would consider myself an expert of sorts.
By the way, my number count was like way off. The doc took forever to update. I don't know where I like randomly made up those numbers, but yeah, it doesn't really matter. So Nate, how are you doing?
Good, man. I live in Florida, as some people who have seen me before know, and it's actually not 1,000 degrees outside, so we're all very happy here.
Nate, you were supposed to be on a little while back, and first off, I want to thank you so much for delaying a couple weeks. That was fantastic, but more importantly, I want to say I am glad to hear that you are mostly intact after the trauma you had a couple months ago.
Yeah, I got bumped for Matt Damon a couple weeks ago, so that's okay. I don't mind. But we had Hurricane Irma came through, and we are actually about 20 miles on the east side of the wall, which is the worst place you want to be. And it was not a lot of buildings were destroyed, but in my area is known for a lot of oak trees, and there's about 50 plus oak trees within a mile of me down, and these were 40, 50 foot tall oaks. But yeah, overall unscathed. People have it definitely way worse in like Puerto Rico and other parts of the state of Florida, but yeah, came up pretty good.
How are things going? I know you said you're personally doing okay, but how about your neighbors and everything?
Good. We got really lucky where we were. My subdivision is somewhat newer. For a lot of Florida, post Andrew, so Hurricane Andrew back in 94 or whatever, devastated South Florida. It drastically changed building codes to be more pro defense of hurricanes. So my house, my neighborhood, the worst damage was a couple shingles lost. No one lost any real roofs or anything. Overall, pretty good. There was some spots. There's a trailer park near me that lost a lot of roofs, but it's somewhat expected with the age of the trailer park that had been there for 25, 30 years. So they were slightly older homes.
So you said the building codes were changed to be in defense of hurricanes. Well, I'm here to tell you that the best defense is a good offense. So you got to find a way to just attack those hurricanes.
SP, did you watch Geostorm this weekend?
Oh,
Obviously, the answer is shooting at the hurricanes. Isn't that what your guys' philosophy is down there? Just shoot at them, bam, bam.
Do you realize that was a thing?
Yes, I do totally realize that was a thing.
I love living in Florida. Occasionally, I'm a little ashamed. And that was definitely a moment where I was like, but okay.
So it's okay. When I lived in Oklahoma, people shot at tornadoes. It just seems to be a universal stupid thing we like to do here.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and roll on with our news. But before we get there, I want to remind you that we are part of the Gonna Geek Network. And also on the Gonna Geek Network is a fantastic podcast called Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. In Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D., they talk about the latest happenings in the world of the Marvel Universe. Now, did you know that Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. releases not one, but two often episodes per week right now because they are covering The Defenders, that's an awesome Netflix series, as well as the even better Inhumans series. So you should check that out on Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. That is on GonnaGeekNetwork.com. And I'll tell you that one of those things I just said was very incorrect. Hint, it was Inhumans being good. Hint.
Well, now some people actually think Inhumans is good, and it's interesting. There's a lot of debate about the series, and I and those of us that record on Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. are on the camp that do not think that Inhumans are good. But what's interesting is we get a lot of feedback from our fans that actually think it is good. So it leads to a lot of interaction back and forth in the feedback to people saying we're wrong.
Crazy.
It's really good if you've never seen television before.
That's fair. I can stand by that review.
You know, okay, so I said we were going to talk news, but we will talk Inhumans for a sec here because I was the one that really, really wanted to like Inhumans, and I am 2 episodes now behind. And I was sitting there in my hotel room last week and like, I want to catch up. I'm going to catch up. So I was using my wonderful Sling box that I've talked about before on here. And I get to what was the most recent episode. So not this past Friday, the Friday before. And what do I see? It looked like it was preempted for a memorial for Gord Downey from the Tragically Hip. That was the only excuse that I needed to not keep watching and just like stop. I could have just easily logged on to demand and watched it right then, but I was like, no, yeah, I'm just gonna go watch some like NCIS or something. So that was where I went.
Welcome to the other side, my brother, where we do not make ourselves feel pain in watching the Inhumans. We do not reward mediocrity in crap.
I will keep watching at some point, but it'll be one of those things that I'll just watch a few. You know,
you're free, Steven. Do not drink the Kool-Aid again. You're free. Don't go back.
They rebooted Degrassi. You have something to watch.
Yeah. I have not seen the latest episode, but from what I heard, they are opening the door to a possible crossover, and that's what everybody's really wanting, a crossover. I'm not sure a crossover to what, probably Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but if they do a crossover, then that will make this whole thing worth it, I guess, to some people. So good for them. I'm glad. And I have to keep watching the show because we're going to podcast on it because Haley writes the schedule for Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. We follow the schedule, and she says we cover everything that's related to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or it's known as the MCU. So guess what? We are covering the Inhumans because it is, as far as we can tell, in the MCU.
Let me give you the official Chris Farrell review of the Inhumans.
All right. Well, for real now, let's go ahead and move on to news. But I will just like do something a little bit more uplifting. We all know how boring episode count talk is, which is still more interesting than Inhumans. And the correct numbers is Steven with 203 episodes, Chris with 206, and SP with 143. Those are, in theory, the correct numbers for the
Steven,
episode count.
Wait a minute. Is SP's 143 more or less than Nightwing?
Wing is 70. Wing was 70. And by the way, the one and only Nate has a special column on here as well. And Nate's official count is not, he was holding up 3 for you audio viewers, but he is actually 4. He is 4.
There are 4 Nates.
So there you go. All right, let's do some news and get as far away from Inhumans talk as possible. sometimes in life we scratch our head and think to ourselves, why is this television show on TV? And then other times we scratch our head and say, why is this app still around? And today we are talking about WhatsApp, and WhatsApp adding a feature that most other messengers have had for a very long time, except for Google Hangouts. You can't ever delete anything from Google Hangouts because it's Google, right? They wouldn't give you the feature to delete something. Yeah, WhatsApp this past weekend announced that they have released a delete option where you can recall messages on the WhatsApp platform. Now, for those of you who are maybe the new generation of smartphone users or might not be familiar with WhatsApp, WhatsApp was a very large messaging platform because it was really the first cross-platform messenger. The first one that worked really well, worked very similar to iMessage. And not only that, but it was they were early adopters of video compression and all this other stuff. And then they were bought by Facebook. So they finally decided to add this delete option within WhatsApp, which is interesting to me because that is something that many other messengers do have. But the other thing that made me want to talk about this was, why is WhatsApp not doing anything really? Like this is the first big news with WhatsApp in a while, and they were bought by Facebook years ago, and everybody figured that they would end up mining the data and then basically retiring it, but WhatsApp has just kind of sat there. It's weird.
WhatsApp was first really huge because it was one of the first mobile apps that was international, had international access. So a lot of countries that had maybe restrictive internet, or they just didn't have support, WhatsApp had. I had a background in the cell phone industry, and it was one of the number one apps people would recommend to messaging people internationally because 10 years ago, international texting, international calling, at least out of the US, was very expensive. So that was their bread and butter for a long time, was they really relied on the international community. Well, then everyone's app is now pretty much global. So I think that really took away their market share and is why it's kind of gotten stale, as you mentioned.
Chris, I want to ask you this. You were an early WhatsApp user. You and I used to WhatsApp back in the day, didn't we?
No, I've never used WhatsApp.
I know. I was just making that up. But,
in fact, you tried to make me use WhatsApp, and I said, I have Google Hangouts on my phone. Why don't we use that?
No, I totally remember. And I tried to make you use Viber,
I'm pretty sure that's
too.
exactly how it went.
Yep.
I don't want to download another messaging app on my phone.
That was exactly how it went, actually. But why I actually wanted to ask you that question was, why did you never really get into WhatsApp?
For me, because I used Google Hangouts for most of my stuff, and most people I was talking to internationally, I convinced to do that. And then occasionally I would use Facebook Messenger, and then Facebook bought WhatsApp. So what's the point? Just use Facebook Messenger if you're going to do it, because almost everyone, with the exception of Stargate Pioneer, has a Facebook page.
You know, I will say that I don't like Facebook Messenger, but I like WhatsApp. If I had more people using WhatsApp, I would gladly use it. Again, the video compression thing is far better than pretty much all the other ones that I've used. Like it's very easy to do. They were early adopters and it's pretty clean. But I have like 3 people that I might occasionally WhatsApp. Actually, I think I got Naki on WhatsApp. I'm gonna text her while SP talks a little bit about WhatsApp.
Oh, WhatsApp is so cool. I really enjoyed it. Steven made me use it, and Steven's brother made me use it because they live in another country and they wanted to be able to text back and forth. And this is before everybody had iMessage, and iMessage was able to go back and forth, or Google Hangouts. So yeah, WhatsApp is cool. As a matter of fact, I haven't used WhatsApp in probably 2 years, maybe more than that, but probably 2 years. I'm thinking, Steven, it was before we started Better Podcasting, because I think by the time we started Better Podcasting, we were using Google Hangouts Messenger. So yeah, I just actually still had it on my phone. I remember seeing it updated, and I just sent you a message. So I think it's the first message I've sent on WhatsApp in over 2 years.
Well, the funny thing is, I see that. I see you sent me a message, but apparently just, for all those who are interested in the Naki saga, Steven messaging Naki, looks like she's not on it anymore. So unless she blocked me, or I just don't have her on my phone. In any case, it just goes to prove that WhatsApp is basically useless now.
Yeah, I mean, you got to go where the people are, and everyone is not on WhatsApp anymore. Everyone seems to be on Facebook Messenger because Facebook makes it easy, if somewhat painful, to use their Messenger app by making it readily available for all platforms.
I will say that what is nice with WhatsApp is the blockability of groups. As far as I know, it is next to impossible to block yourself out of an iMessage group if you're an Apple user, and I think Hangouts is really tough too because you can just get pulled back in.
And then you just leave again when someone makes you come into a dumb group.
But you want to be able to block. Like if you're pulled into a group, you want to just be like block.
I think you can. I had to do it one time when when Google screwed up something with their privacy permissions and people could message you through Google Plus to your Hangouts. And I was like, whoa, this is crap. Until I figured out how to block it, I had random messages coming through.
Gotcha. So WhatsApp, you go ahead, keep sending your data to Facebook. We know that's all you're good for. Speaking of all you're good for, apparently Wolfenstein is only going to be good for offline play, right, Chris?
Well, that's because they're not going to have any multiplayer, and I kind of enjoy the stance they take on this. So a little bit of background. It seems like in the world of console and PC gaming, they're moving to a lot of less single-player content, more multiplayer content, more open-world MMO kind of stuff. And why is that? Yeah, because they can monetize the crap out of it. There was an interview with a former BioWare employee who talked about the reason EA is moving to open world and adding multiplayer and everything, because they can sell boatloads of microtransactions through it. Go back and look at Mass Effect 3. It was a game you didn't really need multiplayer on. The single player was fascinating. They tacked on a multiplayer, and in all fairness, the multiplayer was really fun. But then you got to go and look. There were lots of microtransactions and fees you could pay to unlock new loot, to unlock new gear in the game, and they made boatloads of money. So that's what EA's plan has been going forward, is toss this on everything. So you're starting to see all sorts of open world and multiplayer things tacked on. And where it gets interesting is the guys behind Wolfenstein over at Machine Games, they're doing the exact opposite with Wolfenstein 2, the new Colossus, because cramming in multiplayer, in their own words, would detract too much from the story they want to tell. According to, I'm going to screw up his name here. According to Torsten Bjork, he said at Gamescom, the only way we can create these super immersive narrative experiences is if we can focus solely on the single player. Having a multiplayer component in the work process would just dilute it. That's the danger you have if you try to do two things at once. And you know what? I kind of like this approach to things because I haven't played Wolfenstein the New Colossus yet, but I played the new one, which is basically a reboot of the whole Wolfenstein franchise. The story was very good. It told a great, compelling story. It was well-balanced gameplay. And there wasn't the useless tacked-on multiplayer that I'd play for 5 minutes, go, ugh, I don't want to play this right now. I'm not very good compared to other people, and never touch again. You want me to pay $60 for a good 10 to 16 hour single player experience? I'm more inclined to do that than to get like a 6 hour single player experience and multiplayer that I'll play for a little bit and then just get frustrated and rage quit. So I got to ask, what do you guys think? You think they're going down the right path here by saying we want to focus on single player to tell a better story and not worry so much about multiplayer and monetization that comes with that?
I think it's a cop-out, personally. Titanfall 2 would be an example of amazing multiplayer and amazing campaign mode. Most of the Call of Duty games have amazing story. Actually, no one ever plays the campaign mode, but they're all really good.
That's a fair point.
I don't know why they would say it would dilute the product. It seems like they didn't want to invest in it. I mean, that could be a thing. But, I mean, every first-person shooter to date of any that's popular has a campaign mode and a multiplayer mode. Sometimes that multiplayer mode or the campaign mode is short. There's some that are notoriously short. Like the first Titanfall was almost non-existent storyline, but they learned from their people, which Wolfenstein should take a page from. They learned that people want both. Titanfall 1 got slammed for having a crappy campaign mode, so they came back and went, our bad, here's an amazing one, and still had a wonderful multiplayer. So I think you need both to be a successful first person in the genre.
I totally agree. I think it's a cop-out. Yep, I'm with Nate on this.
If I'm going to watch a playthrough or somebody playing the game, I'm going to watch the playthrough. I'm going to watch them play the campaign. I'm not going to watch them play multiplayer. So for what it's worth, I would prefer to watch the campaign or play the campaign. But Lord knows I don't have enough time to play video games, even though I constantly upgrade my consoles to play video games because I do too many podcasts. And that's on me. Sorry, folks. But I am prepared, once my podcasts end, to go immerse myself in video games for the next 15 years to get caught up.
You know, SP says he'll do that once his podcast ends. Unfortunately, I believe that when his podcast ends, so will the world have done so.
Are you getting back to the whole Geostorm thing again? Did you go see Geostorm this weekend?
You did, didn't you?
I don't know. Is Geo a guy? If so, then yes. Next up on the news, we're going to talk a little bit about China's fall.
That's right. China has a new fall guy. You guys remember that show in the 80s, The Fall Guy with Lee Majors? Yeah. Heather Locklear? The Fall Guy? I know. Which would be totally not appropriate because YouTube would then ban it. But China has this space lab. Yes, China actually has a space station. The Tiangong 1 Space Lab. It actually was in service for quite a bit. Now, according to an article in space.com by Leonard David, in an article posted on October 26th, the Space Lab is headed for an uncontrolled and destructive nosedive into Earth's atmosphere early next year. Exactly when and where on Earth the discarded craft will make its plunge cannot now yet be predicted. All that's known that is that the vehicle will re-enter somewhere between 43 degrees latitude north and 43 degrees latitude south. So the craft's name, which roughly translated into English is Heavenly Palace, was rocketed into Earth's orbit in late September 2011. It was used for 6 consecutive rendezvous and dockings with other spacecraft, and it was part of China's human space exploration activities. The vehicle weighs, and believe it or not, I'm not going to do a comparison here. The vehicle weighs 18,740 pounds. And this is important because it's coming down. The Space Lab ceased functioning in March 2016 and to date has maintained its structural integrity. All important. It's all in one piece. The vehicle is 34 feet long and is 11 feet in diameter because, most stuff in space is round, just, to fit in the rocket. It has 2 solar panels, which measure approximately 23 feet by 10 feet. Now, a check of orbital data shows that it has been slowly dropping in altitude from roughly 225 miles of an orbit at the beginning of 2017 to about 193 miles at present, which is, this week in October 26th. And this means that it's coming down. Yeah, orbital drag at low Earth orbit is eventually going to bring everything down unless you can reinsert it into a higher orbit. So the probability of endangerment and causing damage to aviation and ground activities is very low, the Chinese notification says. Now, I say all this, but it's an 18,000-pound space object. It's going to come down. Now, odds are it won't really survive the re-entry in one piece, and so it's going to break apart when it comes down. So all these pieces are going to come down. Now, Earth, the planet we live on, the planet that this spacecraft is orbiting, is like, 80% water? So odds are 80% that it's going to land in water somewhere.
You know what? If I was just to say SP, go get on the road, right? Get on the road in the middle of a 8-lane highway, right? I'm gonna say just stand there. I'm gonna drive towards you, and I'm not gonna look. The odds are I'm not gonna hit you, SP, because we've got 8 lanes of space. But the odds are I won't hit you.
The scale's not quite the same there, boss.
That's right. It's probably significantly better odds for SP than space.
That's right. You're going to hit me. I know you're going to hit me because you're aiming straight for me. You're like, oh, there's SP, hi, SP. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Whoopsie.
They gave what they said 43 north to 43 south. So if you do the quick math, that's 86 degrees of latitude, which is, 1/4 of the planet. So they can give about 1/4 of a guess, but they can assure us that there's no endangerment. That's you give us a wide range in one area and then go, but there's no danger. And doesn't a majority of the world's population live within 40 degrees of the equator?
Now, they didn't say no danger. They said the probability of endangerment and causing damage to aviation and ground activities is very low.
Yeah, what about my house activities?
But you survived a hurricane. Maybe you can survive a space hurricane.
You
then.
know what, though? We finally just answered that question that we asked a few minutes ago. Is SP's podcast, how are they going to end? We now know.
The Chinese are coming for me.
They're gonna drop a space station on NASA headquarters. Well, Earth's NASA headquarters.
You never. It could be weaponized. We just don't know. Now, odds are it's going to break apart and it's going to come down and it'll hit several people. If it hits a person, it might. It's hard. It's hard to tell.
But that won't mess up aviation or ground activities.
And you know what? So we're going to get you back on that 8-lane road, but instead of me being in a 2018 GMC Sierra, not paying attention, I think I'm going to get a few of my friends to come along, and we're all going to go in smart cars driving towards you, because that sounds like a much better option.
It'd be more like skateboards, segways or something. Yeah. Yeah, it's going to hit something. I don't see it not hitting anything. It's going to hit something, but it's not going to be 18,000 pounds once it hits you. It's going to break apart into multiple pieces. I don't know. We'll find out. Odds are it's going to end up in the Indian Ocean because that's the biggest one shot. I mean, if I was in Vegas, I'd be like, it's going in the Indian Ocean. So we'll see what happens. This will take place early next year, probably somewhere between January and March. So we'll keep our eyes up on the sky for you, our listener, on GonnaGeek.com.
You know what, though? We'll keep our eyes on as well. We'll keep our eyes on the Olympics because my understanding is they're going to make some changes over at the Olympics, right, Nate?
Yes, they've actually laid some ground rules. So everyone here has heard of esports now, right? It's the term to say sports on a competitive level. It starts, Dota was one of the first ones to really get into it. Now it's fighting games, all sorts of MOBAs, quite a bit. It's become huge. ESPN even shows some esports championships now on their programming. So naturally, some people have said, hey, Olympics, what would it take to get the esports community represented at the Olympics? A lot of people, I would guess, if you put a line in an age group somewhere, everyone older would be like, what? That's not a thing. And everyone younger said, why not? So the Olympic Committee, the IOC, actually gave a ruling. They said a couple things. One, esports would have to have a global governing body. So if you're a soccer fan or if you're a video game fan, FIFA, something that would be something that would basically organize how play is, and it's the recognized body by everywhere in the world. Right now, there's 101 bodies that govern e-games. Like MLG is a big one, but even League of Legends has their own enclosed thing that just does them. They'd have to all agree to go into the global format. So that is potentially doable because in the end, if they were to look at like how much money FIFA's making, the gaming places could probably get together. The one thing, however, the biggest stumbling block was content must be in line with Olympic values. Now, why they mention that is violence in games would not be allowed. If you're killing or you're blowing things up, that's obviously not in the values of the Olympic Council and the Olympics as a whole. And so that's one of the biggest roadblocks.
So no Smash Brothers.
It takes about every other game.
Violence is not supposed to be part of the Olympics, yet the original marathon, the first marathon ever, was run after a battle, and the guy that ran it as a courier died afterwards because he ran it in full armor.
In boxing and karate or kung fu, one of the two are in the Olympics. So it's interesting, like, where's the line drawn?
You know what we should do, though? What we should do is we should make the esports competition about playing esports games, like, Olympic-based games. So it'll be like we'll actually play the digital versions of like London 2012, Beijing 2008. That will be the esport. It'll be very meta.
You can play that Wii classic of the Mario Sonic Olympics game they put out. There's no violence in there, I don't think.
I like it.
And one of the last things, the one thing I did appreciate about the Olympic Council is they said competitive esports could be considered as a sporting activity, and the players involved prepare and train with the same intensity, which may be comparable to athletes in traditional sports. So I think that's something that's come a long way. If you were to ask the same question 10 years ago, I think they realized culture itself is recognizing esports as, while it may not be a full athletics as you would think of some other things, it's definitely the skill and talents being recognized.
And there's money to be made, like you mentioned earlier. I mean, you can go and see esports on ESPN at different times now. There's Overwatch tournaments on like the Disney Channel. It's kind of crazy how it's expanded. I mean, I think about just watching stupid games on Twitch that people play and going, how the heck did they do that? And then there's these whole competitive leagues that are being broadcast online and on TV channels and stuff like that. I would love it if they put some of the good games, which sadly are violent games, as an Olympic event. I mean, could you imagine the gold medal for Super Smash Brothers goes to? That'd be so cool.
That would be pretty cool. I guess we could also do like Mario Kart. That'd be sweet.
Oh, that'd be awesome. That damn blue shell would ruin a lot of dreams.
You said, though, that there's Overwatch tournaments. So what is it? They just take like Felicity from this universe and then Felicity from another universe and then make them compete? Or is it a different Overwatch? By the way, that was a terrible joke for you Arrow fans out there.
Do you love how everyone just gave you a look and didn't take the bait?
Yeah, I'm so used to it. Let's go into our extra section here. First up in the extra section of Doom, we've got something interesting coming from the world of Verizon. That's right. If you're not familiar with Verizon, Verizon is a carrier, and they occasionally do cell phones, and occasionally those phones do work. And somebody recently bought a Google Pixel 2. And what they found very odd when they opened up their Google Pixel 2 was they had the phone, they had the proper charger, but they had a weird case in there that looked like it was supposed to have some headphones in it. But there was no headphones in this headphones hole, so to speak. And yeah, sure enough, Google commented that apparently this was an early design of the case and they have no idea how it reached public. So that's super weird because not only did they end up this person getting a case that was supposed to hold headphones, but Google made a case that was supposed to hold headphones. This is the weird thing that nobody's talking about, is why did Google do that? And why did they pull away from that? To me, this indicates that they were originally planning on packaging the Pixel 2 with a pair of headphones, because why would they not have made the case? Or why would they have made the case if that wasn't the case? So I'm just very curious, what's your thoughts on this as a fellow Pixel fanboy, Chris?
Pixel fanboy. I'm more of a Nexus fanboy, but it's a packaging mistake. I mean, whoop-de-doo. There was probably at one point in time plans to do it, or they might be required to in certain foreign countries provide headphones with the cell phone, depending on what the rules are there. I don't think it's really a big deal. It'd be even less of a deal normally, and except for the fact they dropped the headphone jack, so you have to use a USB-C headphone kit, which most people probably don't have. Now, all this being said, Google's got far bigger problems with the Pixel 2 line right now than just packaging mistakes. Screen burn-in, blue screen, QC failing, QA failing. I mean, they're sending out phones that don't have an OS installed on it in some cases.
It's okay because they extended the warranty for 2 years. So instead of a 1-year warranty, it's a 2-year warranty for corded headphones that you don't have.
It's actually a trend right now. You're seeing like LG just moved the V30 out to 2 years as well. So you're starting to see people realize that people aren't buying flagships every year. How do we get people interested in our flagship if it's becoming more competitive? Put a 2-year warranty on it so that if something happens, they stay with us.
Yeah, I'm very disappointed with what I'm reading coming out of the Pixel 2 quality control, and this is just another example, but definitely it shows me that their cost of their phone was more than they planned, or they planned to go with the higher price tag and realized that wasn't going to fly. So,
higher price tag? It's already high.
I know, and that's my scare, is that they originally planned on going higher to bundle in some headphones, and now like if that's their mindset, where are we going to head? Because every year over the last few years, the flagship phones have been getting more and more expensive, and I dislike it strongly.
I can't imagine an iPhone bundled with those earbuds that they have. That'd be an extra $160 because they're not going to cut the price on it. No way would I buy a phone bundled with those pods.
See, my thoughts were that they weren't going to be the wireless Google ones that they're selling right now. They were going to be a wired pair of headphones. That's my personal theory on it.
Yeah, if you look at the cutout, it looks like just a cutout for wired headphones. They're probably USB-C headphones because remember, they dropped the headphone jack, so people would need headphones of their own to listen to stuff, and they probably figured, hey, we're putting the USB-C to 3.5 millimeter headphone dongle in there. We're selling extras for like $9 in our store. Let's not worry about putting headphones in there because whatever you do on that headphone decision, it's generally not going to work out well for you because in most cases, the headphones that come in the box are pretty crappy.
Yeah. And finally, in our extra news point here, Skype is a change in. That's right. Skype today rolled out their public version of their new UI, so to speak. They've put in a whole bunch of new features. They're trying to make it more modern because let's be totally honest, Skype is very dated. It doesn't fall in line with any of the modern messaging tropes and all that stuff. So it definitely is needing a refresh. It looks very old. So that's what they did. They've had it in testing for a while. And now as of today, as we record this October 30th, they are releasing it public. You're going to have all sorts of different features in there now. They have removed some since they started testing, but it looks very, very modern. Now, I guess wanted to bring it up here so that when we're not recording and streaming next week, you know that Skype failed us. So that's why I thought I'd bring it up.
So I have a question. If they're rolling out this new version of Skype, is it with or without corded headphones?
That's a good question.
And they're auto pushing it because when I opened Skype today, it said, welcome to the new Skype. It had a black, like a midnight theme, and the buttons were all moved. I was completely unaware, and it took me a few minutes to even figure out Skype. So the initial look, yes, it looks more modern. However, there was no warning, and especially in a situation where, I prepared, but it was an interesting experience to open up and see something completely laid out different. Definitely a different UI UX.
Yeah, I have not had it pushed through yet, but I don't know why mine. I don't know if mine I just don't have set to update. But in any case, it's not updating, and I'm gonna definitely be okay with that.
Mine's updating right now.
I want to ask you, SP, what's your thoughts on this?
It's doomed to fail for me. I know that because every time that Skype has updated, we found something that goes wrong with it that doesn't allow us to use it how we're using it right now, whether it's video resolution, whether that's the audio interface going back and forth, whether that's Steven playing with his video changing software. Thanks, Steven. Thank you.
Yeah, I actually honestly hope that it works out. I really do hope that it works out because I'm so sick of Skype being a problem. I just would like a major fix to fix it. So
this isn't going to solve anything with the codec issues and things like that we have. They slapped a new skin job on it. That's really all it sounds like to me. We're still going to have the exact same problems we have from week to week, where for some reason we all have high-speed internet connections that are robust, but Skype says your connection's not good enough. And you're like, the hell it is. I have a 15 megabit per second upload pipe. And you're saying that's not enough for me to send 1080p? You're full of crap. And other various obscenities I throw at Skype.
I will tell you that 2 weeks ago, Stargate Pioneer and I fired up Better Podcasting. We were ready to record. And then we had the chat saying, how you guys going tonight? I hear Skype's down. Wasn't down for SP and I gotta say, it was the best Skype experience we've had in years because nobody else was on it. It was phenomenal. There was no problems at all. So there you go.
So what's our backup when Skype doesn't work next week?
We panic. We panic a lot.
String and tin cans.
Sure, sounds good. I'll just do all the voices. That's what I'll do. I'll just clone my screen in all four, and I'll just do the voices.
I like it. We'll just dial in with our cell phones to you and do audio only and problem solved.
Just give freeze frames.
I'm going to WhatsApp you right now.
Yeah, Well, WhatsApp. Awesome. So let's go ahead and find out what's up with SP Space Symposium since he has no more satellites. Or probes, I mean.
Space telescopes.
Telescopes. Sorry.
Way to rep the brand there, boss.
So you're all out of probes, hey, SP?
I'm all out of space telescopes.
Oh.
We haven't even started with probes.
Oh, sorry. My bad. I thought you'd already cycled through telescopes and probes.
Just telescopes.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
If you want to, I could skip the probes and go to landers.
Well, see, here's the thing is I once had a very bad experience when I was abducted by aliens and they probed me. So I might just tune out during your probe sections, but that's okay.
Were they the green aliens or the gray aliens?
They were red.
Oh, then they definitely were coated with your blood.
No, SP, joking aside. Yeah, SP Space Symposium. You wrapped up the last time you did this telescopes, and now you're moving on to probes. That's what the joke was all about. And so this is exciting. This is a new era. What are we going to call this? Still SP Space Symposium, or are we going to call this SP Space Symposium Mark II?
SP Space Symposium Space Probe Edition. So far, I've got 32 probes on the list, and we're going to go over these 32 probes one at a time. We're just going to have fun doing it. We're going to start with the historically accurate probes first and just work our way into modern times, just to give everybody a sense of what's going on in space and what happened in space in the history to get us where we are today, because space is relatively new. Space started in some people's lifetimes that are actually still alive today. Not you all, not you three, you youngins. You guys, I probably weren't alive pre-space shuttle, I'm thinking. So you don't know everything that happened before the space shuttle. So we're going to get into everything. And as it so happens, this is October 30th, 2017. And just a few weeks ago was the 60th anniversary of the first ever satellite to orbit the Earth. And that was just America's pride. It was awesome. There was a ticker tape parade in New York afterwards, and everybody was just amazed at the United States being the first in space.
Is that not true?
That is totally not true. The Russians, the Soviets, made it into space first. On October 4th, 1957, they launched Sputnik.
No, we were there long before the Russians. We just kept it a secret.
Well, I mean, there is the whole Stargate thing that goes way beyond, in the history and stuff. And we had the gold spacecraft that were, size of pyramids. No, none of that happened. It's all fiction, folks.
What? Don't blaspheme. This blasphemy coming from Stargate Pioneer about the Stargate program. I just can't handle it, guys. I can't.
We'll see you later, Chris. In the meantime, I'm going to talk about the actual Sputnik and what happened. Sputnik began the space age on October 4th, 1957. It had 5 objectives that the Soviets had. First was test the method of placing an artificial satellite or artificial moon, it was called, or red moon, actually, in the propaganda at the time, into Earth orbit. The second objective was to provide information on the density of the atmosphere by calculating its lifetime in orbit. We just talked about the Chinese space station coming down, and it's coming down because there are particles in higher level Earth orbit, or low Earth orbit, but higher altitudes, and that creates drag, which eventually brings these satellites down. So we had no idea that existed at the time. So we had to send a satellite up to figure out how it would interact with the satellite and how fast it would cause the satellite to come down. The third objective was to test radio and optical methods of actually tracking this thing in orbit. The fourth objective was to determine the effects of radio wave propagation through the atmosphere. It had never been done before outside of the Earth's atmosphere. So we had to test that out. And they tested principles of pressurization used on the satellites. It was actually filled with nitrogen. We'll get into that a little bit later. So actually, Sputnik was first proposed on December 17th, 1954, by the chief Soviet rocket scientist Sergei Korolev. That is Korolev. And for those that are into the 2001, 2010, you might know a little ship named Korolev. So he was a PowerPoint presentation given into the Ministry of Defense that was presented via Skype, and it was approved, and everybody was happy, and they continued. No. I can only
Skype.
Yeah.
Wait.
Yes.
1954. That was the good era of Skype. Sorry, that makes sense now.
That's right.
Good era.
That was
Long
the
bandwidth.
era of Skype where they had no charts. It was done on a chalkboard, and you actually had a little handwritten report with hand-done drawings at the time. Now, Sputnik, by the way, there's a lot of controversy on what it actually was in the articles that are out there today. I've heard elementary satellite 1. I've heard Sputnik is satellite. Well, at the time, there was no satellite equals Sputnik. What Sputnik actually meant was traveling companion. Now, of course, it's synonymous with satellite in Russian, but at the time, it was traveling companion. So that was kind of neat that they actually named it that. Now, just a little tidbit, the Soviet Union had actually been aiming for a bigger satellite. We'll get into the technical details of Sputnik in a second. But in order to beat the Americans, in order to be first into space, they did some risk mitigation and they went smaller. And here's another little known fact. The launch almost failed. The rocket actually was seconds away from exploding itself. And at the last minute, one of the main engines actually started working like it was supposed to, and it went into space. So that was cool. Now, Sputnik was launched from what is now the Baikonur Cosmodrome, but at the time, it wasn't named that. It was Site 1 of 5 in the 5th Tiretatum range in Kazakh SSR, which is now Kazakhstan. And the launch rocket that was used was known as an R-7, which was basically an ICBM, an intercontinental ballistic missile. And that same ICBM, the R-7, is now been modified over the years, and in 1966 became the Soyuz launch vehicle, which is still used today to bring astronauts to the International Space Station. So that's cool. Now, the satellite, which if you're watching the YouTube, you can see on the screen in one of the models, in one of the museums that it is actually in, is no bigger than a beach ball. It's 23 inches across, 2 feet across in diameter. It's just a ball, and that's it. And it's got 4 antennas sticking out of it. There's 4 long wires that are just like a car antenna, basically. And that is the satellite. And that is the simplistic nature of this thing. It weighed about 184 pounds, which is about what one of us would weigh, right? And it was just basically the size of a beach ball. When it went into orbit, it did not go into a perfect circular orbit. They just lobbed this thing up there and hope for the best. And it ended up into being elliptical orbit. And on the low side, it was about 134 miles up. And on the high side, it was 583 miles up. So it went around the Earth 1,440 times before it finally came down a few months later. The operator of the spacecraft was the Soviet space program, but there really wasn't anything to operate it with it. We didn't send any signals up to it for it to do anything. It basically just beeped. It had a couple of radio transmitters on there in the 20 and 40 megahertz range, and the emissions took place in alternate groups of 0.3 seconds in duration. So all it did was beep, 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 beep. And that's all it did. And if you were listening to a radio that could receive those frequencies, or believe it or not, even televisions back then, you could actually tune in while it was operating for 3 weeks and hear this signal. So this scared the crap out of the entire world that wasn't the Soviet Union, even though they were forthright. And they said the only thing on here is these 2 radio transmitters. Everybody was convinced that the thing was taking pictures of everybody right now. And that wasn't the case. So Sputnik 1 was, and there was actually 4 in the series, only 3 of them made it into orbit, was powered by 3 silver zinc batteries, which were designed to operate for 2 weeks, and they actually lasted for 3 weeks. So good on you, Russians, for your great engineering, because it lasted 50% longer than it was supposed to.
They were
Now-
probably energizers.
There was talk of putting a little bunny on board, a little monkey with the symbols, crashing back and forth. Doom, 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 doom. Yeah. mhm. Now, with the radio transmissions, they were able to deduce what the effect on the radio transmissions were in the ionosphere. They calculated the drag of the object in space because they were looking at how it was coming down. And it was actually filled with nitrogen. So if any of it escaped, they could actually tell in the temperature sensors that were on board, just broadcasting out on those 2 frequencies. Why did they do this? Because they were interested in micrometeor impacts. Believe it or not, even back then, they were considering, well, how much rocks are there in space? Because we saw meteors coming down all the time. So we thought there was little bits of rocks up there all the time, which there are, but not enough that would prevent the International Space Station or manned spacecraft to be circling the orbit. So that was all great. And by the way, a lot of people that actually thought they saw Sputnik as it was overhead in the months that it was up there, they were actually seeing the upper stage of the R7 rocket because it was just so much bigger. It was the rocket actually went into space too and finally came down earlier than Sputnik did, but a lot of people were actually seeing the rocket body and the glint off the rocket body from the sun as it was going overhead. An interesting fact, Sputnik actually led to the creation of both NASA and DARPA. We'll talk about it later as we get into the American first of the space program, but DARPA and NASA were created the next year in 1958. And as I said, it actually basically put the fear of God into Americans at the time and anybody that was allied with America. But contrary to popular belief, it wasn't a surprise. A lot of people have been reporting for 60 years that this surprised America. Well, it might have surprised the American public, but guess what? The CIA knew about it and briefed President Eisenhower about it. And as early as 1954, I believe. And all these documents are available now. They were just released on the 60th anniversary on October 4th. The CIA released 59 documents, including 440 pages of intelligence reports on the Soviet space program, what became the Soviet space program, and the satellite, the Sputnik. So President Eisenhower knew, the American public might not, but it didn't surprise the United States government. We actually knew what was going on, and that induced Eisenhower to speed up the American space program. We'll talk about what happened with that in a couple of space symposiums here. So just to let you know, the Soviets were ahead of America for a very long time. The Soviet space program went to achieve a series of other firsts in space, including the first man in space, the first woman in space, the first vehicle that had 3 men in space, the first spacewalk, the first spacecraft to impact the moon, the first spacecraft to orbit the moon, the first spacecraft to impact Venus, and the first spacecraft to soft land on the moon. And the United States didn't really catch up until we landed a man on the moon in 1969. So that's why actually landing on a man on the moon was such a big deal, because the Soviets were the first for a very long time. We're going to talk about all those firsts in the coming weeks. So I talked about the fact that it lasted 3 weeks. On October 26th, 1957, the batteries finally died, and it ran into orbital decay, came down out of orbit on the 4th of January, 1958. Now, replicas of the Sputnik satellite can be seen at museums in Russia and the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum right here in the Washington, D.C. in America. So if you want to go see it, you can find it at the Smithsonian.
That's awesome. So you said that the revolutions were 1,440, right?
That is correct. 1,440, and each orbit was roughly 96 minutes.
Okay, so 96 minutes. How many kilometers or miles, if you prefer, is that?
A lot.
Like circumference. You know what the circumference of Earth is?
2 pi r.
Yeah, but the orbit is a lot bigger
A
than
lot
the
bigger, right? Absolutely. So my question for you is: you're always relating things to the GMC Sierra. I just don't see a GMC Sierra taking that sort of trip either. Like I just don't think it could go that many, because that's probably like, I don't know, like probably 80 to 100 million miles, kilometers, maybe.
Yeah, well, so the circumference of Earth is 26,000 miles, right? So
Right.
you multiply that by 1,000,
Mhm.
and that's 26 million miles. You know what?
Yeah.
What we should do is we should calculate that exact mileage, and then we should approach GMC to
Right.
give us each a GMC Sierra, all four of us,
Yeah.
so that we could attempt to make it run, say 40 million miles, and see
Yeah.
how long that would take us to drive 40 million miles in a 2018 GMC Sierra 4x4.
I agree. So yeah, I just wanted to ask that question just to be fair, keep things all things even here. So there you go.
It's about 40. It traveled about 42 million kilometers.
Yeah. So there you go.
Because math.
I actually calculated
Google.
based off of the Earth's circumference
There you
long
go.
before I asked that question, and it works out
Better
to be
answer.
57,708,000 kilometers if you only use the Earth's circumference, and it is much bigger than that because you're in space. So there you go. Well, thank you,
So-
SB. So thanks so much for talking about the probes. We always appreciate you coming on SP Space Symposium and probing us. Well, anytime you want to do that, just let me know and I'll let you probe us.
Well, tell you what, next time we'll talk about Sputnik 2 and its very important spot in the history of the space age.
Awesome. I can't wait to find out about that. Actually, before we jump off of that really quick, the thing that I always find interesting with Sputnik, I actually didn't realize how small it was, but I always thought the antenna thing was interesting because they were just like 4 antennas just like hanging off of a ball, right? And I thought that must be really hard to have figured out the way that it's going to go into space, because of, that's going to cause all sorts of problems with, with trajectory, trying to get it up there and all that stuff. So then just to find out they lobbed it up made me laugh. So thanks.
Was just a big lot. It would be just like taking a trebuchet and pulling the cord and seeing it go off to space.
It's awesome.
That's how we're going to get Steven to space.
Whatever it takes. Why not? But that is taking us towards the end of the show. Before we wrap up, we'll go around the table, plug and promote and do whatever we would like to do. First off, though, I want to take a moment to thank Nate for coming on here. Nate, I know that you don't have a podcast launched yet because you got all sorts of ideas spinning, but I just want to give you a moment still to promote whatever you would like.
I would like to promote all the Gonna Geek family podcasts. There's quite a few out there. I don't think people realize there's over 20 now. Just because you watch this one, I guarantee you there's one out there that will promote something else you love, even if they talk about the Inhumans.
Well done. We've also going to turn it over to Stargate Pioneer. We've also going to turn it over. That's my new language. SP, what do you want to plug?
I want to promote the podcast that talks about The Defenders from Netflix and Marvel. And that podcast on the network would be Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D., talking about The Defenders on Netflix. And it's a great series. It's only 8 hours. You should check it out.
Awesome. Chris, do you have anything that you want to plug or promote?
So I do, actually. We're coming up on the Extra Life marathons this weekend. And for those that aren't familiar, it's gaming to raise money for different charities, for different hospitals, for sick kids and things like that. And if you listen to the All Things Good Nerdy podcast, we had Keith on there, aka Clone Freak 1, who's been in our chat room there a long time, who is talking about the fact that he is doing 24 hours of gaming for Extra Life this weekend. So I want to encourage you guys, go check out his stream, twitch.tv/clearancevgrack. I'll be rebroadcasting it on my Twitch channel, and I know there'll be some other Twitch channels that will be rebroadcasting it. So go pop in, give him some support, and if you don't want to give money to the charity he's supporting, there are tons of other people that are doing Extra Life Gaming this weekend. You can find a charity that hits much closer to home. Go find some way out there, enjoy watching some gaming, and feel good about donating to charity and helping out sick kids.
Absolutely. I'll just go ahead and say that's Saturday, right? So we've got nothing on the calendar for Geeks.live on Saturday. So unless there's a technical problem, we'll just go ahead and embed it on Geeks.live. I'll make that executive decision right now. Hopefully the boss doesn't fire me. We also
been known to happen before.
It has been known to happen.
You
That's
did
true.
get fired from your own show.
One thing that I want to just go ahead and plug is Nate actually mentioned it, that we have a lot of different shows on the network. And I want to let you know about one that we haven't had a chance much to talk about, but they've been with us for about half a year now, and it's Super Geeky Playdate. Super Geeky Playdate, and in episode 59, titled Top 5 Soundtracks, their good friend Max stops by, and in an odd coincidence, also does their arch nemesis, Randy, and they're going to discuss the Justice League, Star Wars, Black Panther, and all the best music. So you can check that out at GonnaGeekNetwork.com. That is Super Geeky Playdate. Again, about 6 months or so, I think they've been on the network, and you can check that out and all the other awesome podcasts there. But that is the end of episode 213, or is it 113, of the official GonnaGeek.com show. I'm Stephen Jondrew saying thanks for watching episode 99.
I'm SP saying, watch out! It's a Chinese space station! It's coming on!
I'm Chris from episode 113. I look forward to getting to 213 one day.
And I'm Nathan from an episode in the future that you haven't seen yet.
Bye.
Thanks for checking out another episode of the GonnaGeek.com show. If you enjoyed it, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes or a thumbs up on YouTube. We encourage you to send your feedback by email to show@GonnaGeek.com. You can find our entire archive at GonnaGeek.com/show. And while you're there, why not check out all of the other geeky content on the Gonna Geek Network? Want to chime into our live chat? Join us Mondays at 8:45 p.m. Eastern at www.geeks.live. The music heard on this show is by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. This show was produced and edited by Stephen Jondrew of Gonna Geek Productions. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.